This video is going to be a little bit different. As you know, I do like these Warhammer 40k figurines. Love them. Paint them. And there's a culture war thing going on where they introduce females into a male faction in the Warhammer 40k universe. And the argument that the ideologues and the leftists and the people that are trying to invade this space are using is that men don't want women in their spaces. We don't want women in our precious games. And right here off the bat, I'm showing, like, not only do I run women, I paint women, I have women squads, all women elf squads, Sisters of Battle, all these. These are all the female characters I have just laying on my desk, not to include the hundreds of dollars of boxes that I have up on the top that I haven't even gotten to yet. So let's back up. I guess I need to first establish what the issue is, because I don't know how many people on my channel follow 40k, Warhammer 40k. I don't know how many of you are into nerd culture, anime, things like Gundam, Star Wars, Halo, Lord of the Rings. You know, if you want to go old school, the OG was Lord of the Rings. Warhammer there's a lot of it that's based on the Dune universe. There's another one. And all of these IPs, if you will, these established nerd culture stories, these grand operas, these things that have been around for decades, have a very passionate and established fan base that goes back decades. Especially like Lord of the Rings, Dune, Star Wars, you could say. Those are the three big ones that come to mind. And with anything, all of them at some point or another have risen and fallen in popularity. Like Disney bought Star Wars, Marvel Universe is a big one. Amazon got their hooks into Lord of the Rings, and now they're eyeing the Warhammer 40k universe. It happened with The Witcher. I don't know if any of you guys watched that series. Henry Cavill played The Witcher. It was a very established thing based on books and video games, and it had a story that was coherent and comprehensive, and people like it. That they have a built-in following of people that are super invested in it. They're super invested in it. It's, you can almost say a little too invested, but nevertheless, like, that's their escapism. That's how at the end of their crappy days they get away from the world and they dive into this rich fantasy, and that's what we do. We look for, whether you play video games or read books, whatever you're into, when you want to get away from it all, you get into your little hobbies. Maybe it is just weightlifting for some people. It can be whatever you're into, but you have expectations that whatever you're into, it's just like, let's leave the rest of the crap out of this. I want to get into my favorite book, Harry Potter, whatever, pick something. So if you go online and type Warhammer 40k woman space marine or woman custodes, which is their big bad super soldier, you'll find hundreds of videos that are diving into this argument. So I'm not really trying to expound on that argument. They are basically, Henry Cavill once again expressed interest in nerd culture. He did The Witcher, and he wound up leaving The Witcher second or third season in because they were not following the lore. They kept changing it. They were making the story more about these really badass women characters, and they were edging his character out. And he wasn't super... It wasn't that he had a problem with women, which is how they tried to spin it. It was that they weren't following the very established, easily accessible, easily researchable lore that was available. And the showrunners had no respect for the IP. They even said they didn't play the video games or read the books that they were based off of. And he just says, well, I'm out. I don't want to do this. Like, this is not what I signed up for. So then, of course, what happened? The next season was totally, like, they went off the rails with the woke. All the characters were race swapped, gay, whatever. Like, they just went full DEI with it. And the show failed. And this happens time and time again, where they're constantly changing the race from white to something else, person of color, fill in the blank, especially with redheads for some reason. Or they make the male characters weak, or they push them out entirely for some strong, woman who's basically a man, and they man up the women. They just totally ruin everything. They did it with Star Wars. They did it with Lord of the Rings. They made Galadriel some warrior princess, and she was never a warrior in any of J.R.R. Tolkien's books. And then we cite some really, really obscure lore thing that you can point to where they're like, they find a way to sort of shoehorn the DEI, diversity, inclusion, all that crap into it. And then they do this thing where they gaslight and they attack the fans. They say the fans were all bigots, we're all Nazis, we don't like women, we're not into women. The argument for Warhammer is that we're all a bunch of sweaty neckbeards that have never known a woman's touch, and we just don't want women in our spaces. What? Like, they're saying that we don't want women in Warhammer? When I opened this video, I showed you all of my woman figurines, specifically so you could see like half of my armies are all female, and they're all female armies. The Sisters of Battle, the Sisters of Silence, my entire female elf squads. I call them my big booby Eldars. And like, I like the women figurines. They're fun to paint. They're little sexy little figurines, and it's like, me and my son have a blast painting them. And they're powerful armies too. The argument that we don't want women in our space is absurd, because if you go back and look at the lore, there's tons of women characters. There's commissars, there's the Inquisition. Like, a lot of those are awesome, badass females too, and they're mean. Like, they're no pushovers. The women have a huge presence in Warhammer 40k, and they are super powerful. Matter of fact, you can run Sisters of Battle, Adeptus Sororitas, and mop up with them. They are good armies. They are tough to beat, especially if you play well. So just the idea that we don't want women in our spaces is stupid. But that's how they try to sell it. Now, how are they trying to shoehorn it in? Well, for years now, there's been two factions they've had their eye on, which are male only. And that is the ubiquitous Space Marine. Everybody knows the Space Marines. When you think of Warhammer 40k, what do you think of? The blue Space Marines, the Ultramarines. Those are all men. And then there's the Adeptus Custodes, which are the elite guard that guard the Emperor. Like, they're the best of the best, like the very best human engineered soldiers. They're all men. They always have been. And I'm not here to rehash or dive into the lore. You can go online and find millions of videos that are way better than what I'm going to put together. But I am super versed in the lore. I'm super into it. I have been for a long, long time. And I've been painting these figurines on and off for decades. So you can't use the argument, well, you're not really a fan, you're just into it because it's a bandwagon, it's becoming popular. No, I'm glad it's becoming popular again. I was excited to see that. And yeah, I did kind of put it down for a long time, and now I'm getting back into it, but I've always been into it, and I've been into it for a very long time, going way, way, way back. You know, we have no problem with any of the women characters. Some of them are awesome. The issue we have is when you try to force your ideology into male-only spaces. You just won't let us have anything. And then you use the argument that we're all bigots and we just don't like women. It's absurd. So why does it matter? That's what I wanted to talk about. Why does it matter? What does it matter if there's a woman Space Marine? I have Etsy figurines. I tried to dig it out. I want to show you guys. I have these cute little adorable women Space Marine models. And they're basically sexualized Space Marines with their boobs hanging out, and they're all in sexy poses, and they're wearing Space Marine armor. Would I ever run those in a game? No, but they're fun to paint, and they look cool. And so it's like, like that itself is not an issue. I like women. And I like painting women, and when I play video games, I like hot women when they're... That's another space where it's totally getting screwed, is video games. We'll talk about that in a minute here. Don't even get me started on what they're doing to video games. My lord. But no, the argument, what they're trying to do is, because they've been trying to muscle into the male-only factions for a while, it isn't good enough for them that half of Warhammer is female and has their own dedicated female armies, which are every bit as powerful as the male armies on the tabletop. So there's no disparity between strength. If you run a Sisters of Battle against Ultramarines, and each army's worth a certain amount of points, if you show up with the same amount of points on both sides of the battle, you have just as much chance of women winning with the women as you do with the men, and then sometimes even more of a chance because they're a little over P in certain areas. So if you know how to exploit that, you can mop up with them. So that's not the issue. That has never been the issue. So what is the issue? Well, they went ahead and did it. When Henry Cavill leaked that he wanted to make a Amazon partnered live action Warhammer show, I don't know if it's going to be a movie or a series. Nobody knows yet. DEI has gotten its hooks into it. Now, two of the biggest funders for Games Workshop is BlackRock and what's the other one? The DEI people, the ones that do all this to every IP. That's how they get their funding. They get their funding from these companies, and these companies demand, hey, you got to have a little diversity. You have to do something. You have to change that. So they subtly went back in there and changed the lore to include a woman Custodes, which is like the super Space Marines. And, the fans went nuts. They were like, hey, where did this come from? There's never been women Space Marines. Well, Games Workshop replied, there's always been women Space Marines ever since they were created, since the first 10,000. And everybody's like, no. And there's guys that are scouring the lore trying to find any evidence to support this whatsoever. And it's obvious that Games Workshop, the owner of the 40k property, is lying. And as it turns out, they're saying they didn't really want to do it, but since Amazon's involved, in order to get funding, they kind of have to. They were demanding that they shoehorn a woman into this male-only space. And, of course, it was pointed out, well, don't you have the Sisters of Silence, which run with the Custodes? They're like the partners with them, so they're like the female version of the Custodes. And you have the Sisters of Battle, and they said, no, that's not good enough. We need one of these strong male things to be diverse. It's got to be that. It has to be the Space Marines. It has to be the Custodes. It's got to be these male-only spaces. It has to have women in it. Why? And then that's where the argument stems from. That's it. The internet blew up, and they were going back and forth. And of course, the left's argument is so absurd because they're doing what they always do. They're basically calling us a bunch of names. They're saying that we're all a bunch of bigots. They're saying that, we're sexist and it's boys only and we don't want women. And they're calling us a bunch of sweaty neckbeard, basement dweller, virgin incels. And I felt compelled to make this video because you can call me whatever you want, but an incel ain't one of them. I'm married, I've got kids, and I'm not going to win any IFBB trophies, but I'm far from the basement dwelling neck-bearded incel. And there's a lot of guys just like me that feel the same way. Stay the fuck out of men's only spaces. Let us have our thing. You have yours, we have ours, and most of the times they're together. We have nothing against women. I run women. I have women only armies and figurines, and I love painting them. You can call them, if you want to talk about the over sexualization of some of the models, you can say, well, you're obviously like, yes, you're 100%. I am a man. I like attractive women. I like big booby Eldar. I like painting the half-naked figurines that are stripped and don't have any armor on. I like watching games where they have just jiggle physics when the anime character's running and her boobs are bouncing and I can see her butt. I buy the games because they have that. You know what I mean? Like, remember Tomb Raider? We all used to just dance Lara Croft around and try to make her naked. They had like a code at the end of the game where you could strip her. Like all the dudes tried to do that. And their argument is like, it's sexist and it's all this ist stuff for us. These characters shouldn't have to be subjected to the childish male gaze. I'm like, well, first of all, they're not even real. These are not real people. So it's a fantasy. And in your fantasy, you should be able to enjoy it any way you want to. And if you bought a game specifically because the lead character is some string bikini warrior goddess with a sword that beats up aliens, and her butt looks really nice when she's fighting, and you like to watch her run around the screen to see what different angles of her ass you can look at, that's your prerogative. What's wrong with it? That's like why I used to play video games, and now they're making all the female characters ugly and mannish and just everything's lesbian and gay, and And then they're like, well, you're obviously against gay people. No, I don't care. I just don't. Why does it have to be jammed down my throat? Why does everything have to be gay? Why does everything have to be trans? Why can't you just leave my escapism alone? Just leave it alone. It's a good story. And on that note, if you do write a gay character or a trans or whatever, if it's well written, most people don't care either, but it's not. It's just jammed in there for the sake of jamming it in there. And a lot of this little vocal minority that insists on making these changes and ruining the things that we love don't even play or buy the product. They don't. They say things like, well, if Warhammer 40k was safer, I would probably play it with my friends. And then they list up all these changes that need to be made so that they'll feel safe playing it. I don't feel safe as a gay man playing 40k because the people are mean to me. First of all, I don't see any evidence of that in real life. And second of all, maybe it's not for you. Did you ever think of that? It is okay to have things that are not for you. Barbie's an example. They made that Barbie movie, and I had my issues with a lot of, like, some of the things that they were trying to shoehorn in and all the politics. But at the end of the day, it's Barbie. It's not for me. I'm not the target demographic. So, like, whatever. Just go to the next. Warhammer's not for you. It is an authoritarian, evil, dark, brutal satire of what happens when, basically... Yeah, it's basically space Nazis, and all the factions are evil, and it's a mess, and everybody's trying to murder each other. And you could say, like, if anything, it's like it's sort of a what not to do kind of thing. But it's Warhammer. It's setting up the stage so you can build an army and fight another army, and you have a reason to. That's what it is. And they're like saying they want to turn it into this, like, they want to remove the war from Warhammer, make it a safe space for trans people. Like, why? You have this, decades-old fan base that's been following religiously with thousands of books of lore that people are super invested in, and they've spent thousands of dollars and thousands of hours painting, and now this little tiny group wants to come in and make it all gay and trans, strong whammon, and now all of a sudden we're a bunch of bigots. And you're going to, bend the knee to this group? Why? They don't buy the product. They don't consume. They don't even watch the shows. They come in, they shit over everything, they ruin it, they get their victory, they make their change, and they make it harder for the next IP to defend itself or stay to its, established lore. And they just keep ruining everything. And now, none of it's consumable. All of it's horrible. Lord of the Rings was terrible. Halo, Master Chief took his helmet off. It's like stupid. I spent more time looking at his ass than I did see him fighting the Covenant. Star Wars, do we really have to go into what they did to Star Wars? Jesus. Think of all of the IPs that they've gotten their hooks into, and they've just ruined every single one of them. You go watch Lord of the Rings on Amazon, and you've got gay black elves, and, all the white male characters are either evil for the sake of being evil, or they're totally incompetent or over the top bigoted, or whatever. They paint us in a light that's just bad. And every woman is this huge badass girl boss that ain't need no man and can defeat armies by herself, and it's like have no weaknesses. There's no character arc. They have no struggle where they go from, say, not being able to do it, and then it shows the journey to doing it. No, they were good the whole time. They just needed to learn to unlock their true power as women. That's their character arc. Every single time. The character arc of the strong woman is that man held her back, and she just needs to realize how truly powerful and awesome she is. And it's just it's not interesting, and it's also dismissive, and it's insulting, and the arguments they use are straight up lying and insulting, and it's me saying, well, why can't they have women space marines? Well, there's really nothing that says they can't. But think about it. If only the best of the best, if 1 in 1,000 men make it through the surgical procedure, and it's genetic upgrades. So basically think of taking men and women. So you've got a group of men and women, and you're going to purposely give them all of the Russian steroids for the Olympics. And only the very top 3 of the entire group is going to make it. And this is based off of strength and all that. And women can apply, but they're not going to lower the standards. So who do you think is going to make it through all that? If 1 in 1,000 men survive the procedure and then they're looking for the best of the best, the strongest, it's likely going to be men. And they're going to spend all that money and give them the best armor that's ever been built. And it's like, it's the modern day equivalent would be, you know, those robotic suits of armor they're making, which cost, you know, upwards of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to produce. And you only make one suit and you're going to give it to your best, strongest special ops operator. Women or men can apply for the position, but who do you think is probably going to win out? It's probably going to be a dude, just because of our inherent strength differences. So to have a woman Custodes, it kind of breaks the lore. It breaks the logic of it. And when we point that out, when we try to point it out from a logical standpoint, why it's stupid to have a woman, it's not the saying women are not allowed. It's saying, hey, no, it's dumb. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to have a woman Custodes. They go, well, you're just a bigot. You don't like women. You're just an incel. You just live in your basement. It's the dumbest argument. That's how they try to shut it down. And then, of course, what do? We defend ourselves. No, I'm not. I'm not a bigot. I've got a daughter. I'm married. Fuck you. Fine. If that makes me a bigot, I'm a bigot. I'll lean into it. I'll tell you straight up. I buy video games because the women are half naked. And you took that away from me. You ruined it. You know, if anything, you destroyed my escapism, and they're doing it again with 40k. And I'm just making this video not to really go into the what, why, and where. Like I said, there's dozens of videos that do this way better than I ever could. I just wanted to point out that the arguments they're using are lies. They are lying to you by telling you that we don't want women in our spaces and that we're anti-woman and all of that, because it's bullshit. And you could do any kind of research and find that women have been in... Warhammer has been one of the most diverse spaces since it started. So for them to use that argument is a straight up lie. No, what they want to do is they want us to bend the knee and give up the 1 or 2 spots that we have that are all male. It would be like if we insisted on putting men in the women factions. Same thing. Sisters of Battle, we start introducing trans women. Misters of Battle. It's ma'am. Misters of Battle. It would be the exact same thing. We would say, whoa, wait a minute. No, these are all women. They're for a reason. And there's established lower reasons why they're all female. You can go read that. And it's easy to find. There's tons of information. It's the argument's bullshit. And I'm sick of being called names because I disagree with... I agree that it should remain male only. Space Marines in the 40k universe should remain all male. Custodes should be all male. This is based on the established logic and science of the lore, which I respect very much. And, you know, it's like, if you don't respect the lore, then they say, well, the lore can change. Yeah, it can. But if it's one thing if you change the lore to, you know, like sometimes things will be added and you got to find ways of creatively tying it in. And they'll change the lore to sort of make that make sense. But in this instance, it doesn't make sense. They're just jamming it in there and saying, well, lore changes. It breaks the immersion. It breaks the logic. It breaks their own established stories. And the guys are upset about it, and rightfully so. And I'm speaking out because I think it's wrong, and I think it's wrong how they're using this argument to paint us all with a big brush as a bunch of Nazis, bigots, and whatever other names they commonly call us. No, we are regular men and women. We do have daughters, we do have families, and we love them very, very much, and we want to see them have a space just like we do. And I want them to be included in it. My daughter, she's into it too. And she can do whatever she wants. She did paint a woman Space Marine, and you know what? Fine. That's her thing. I'm not going to tell her she can't. But what she can't do is write some letter to Games Workshop and insist that they change their own established storyline to suit her. She wants to have women Space Marines? That's totally cool, man. I'm down for it. I'll help her paint them. But you don't get to just rewrite history just to suit your person, you know, whatever your ideology. No. The argument's dumb. And I'm not gonna be quiet about it. And I don't know. This video sucks. I'm sure there's a millions more better, but it's been bugging the crap out of me. I've been kind of sick, so I haven't really been able to do much except for paint figurines and watch these videos. And I'm watching, there's tons of them, and they're just going off on this. And I finally was like, you know what? I gotta throw my 2 cents in. Anyway, I am actually gonna try to train today. As you can see, I'm wasting away, man. Look like a cancer patient. I'm pretty shredded though. I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you even care? I know like this is probably not the demographics for this. Yeah, let me know.